Okay, welcome to week 12. Let's go see how we did on the previous week. Okie dokie. So the assignment was kind of designed to chest an awful lot of things that we talked about all the way back to chapter 6. I mean, these are concepts that we've been talking about for quite some time, but it was really about how can you deal with classes and how to do secondary input validation in the classes. That's what this whole thing is about. So, the scores were okay. I mean, 77, that's not bad. About half of you are getting it, about half of you are not. That's not necessarily good. Now look, I try to make things easy for you guys by giving you working examples of all of the things that we're talking about. I mean, so for example, there's a prompt for integer thing that you could have just copied as is, making no changes whatsoever. Put it in there. There's one for prompt for enum. Okay, you might have to tweak that one a little bit, but still, it would get you 90% there. Then they had the examples in chapter 8, like for department, where we did secondary input validation on the constructor and all the setters. And then all the rest of the things in chapter 7 about, the array list and all that. I mean, I gave you everything you needed in example form. So, you got the book, you got the lecture, and you got the examples. Now, I can't make you go look at those examples, but if you did, it would probably cut your time down. I mean, if you got all the time in the world to work on these assignments, then I won't say a thing. But if you're kind of constrained, or maybe you're kind of in a hurry, well then please do look at the stuff that's posted. Okay, so yes, I was expecting that you were going to create an instance of the professor and of the schedule. Yeah, that's kind of what the assignment said, like in the first line. And I was expecting you to wash the incoming parameters in a parameterized constructor. Yeah. And then I was expecting that the setters would be where you'd have all the rest of your secondary input validation. Some of you were completely devoid of any secondary input validation at all. That's not exactly what I was expecting. And journal question number 4, it may have been a little confusing, but what I was asking is, how do you hide a method or a setter or a getter? That's the question. Okay, so let's go see what's going on this week. So one of the things that we need to talk about is that I've released the term project. Now, clearly the term project is not due, okay? So here we are at week 12. So we're doing chapter 11 and quiz 5. So let's just go take a peek at quiz 5. So quiz 5 is chapters 9 and 10, okay? That shouldn't be too complicated, I don't think. Nothing really fancy here. Come on. Okay. So chapters 9 and 10, that's the text processing and inheritance. Okay, cool. So once again, the term project has been released. Now that does not mean that it's due any time soon at all. But the term project is one of those big ones, okay? Now in this particular case, I'm not actually coming up and telling you and not giving you a class diagram and all the rest of that stuff. It's merely a video showing the thing off, and you need to infer from that what it is you need to do. Okay, so this is a term project. Now, quite frankly, the term project is all about doing graphical user interfaces, which we have not touched at all. So you might want to wait to work on it until after you get a little bit further into the course. However, after this chapter, well, that's not true. You could start working on the inheritance part right now. And get all the inheritance part worked out. And then when it came time for doing the graphics part, well, then you'd be almost there. Okie dokie. So let's go take a peek at what's going on this week. So finally, we got to chapter 11, where we're talking about exceptions. And up to this point, we have been bending the rules a little bit on how to deal with secondary input validation. So normally when you do secondary input validation, you would throw an exception, but we didn't know what exceptions were at the time. So now I'm going to change all that. So every place where we used to just print an error message, now we're going to swap that out with doing exceptions. Okay, cool. All right, which means when the notes get published for this week's lecture, which will be next week, there'll be a brand new input validation example. So the prompt for integer guy is going to include something different, where all the error messages come out and get changed into exceptions. Okay, just saying. Okay, there's about an hour worth of video, and I don't think you'll have too much trouble. Okay, so that's about it. Please do go watch the video lectures.